War in Afghanistan has been blamed for making a stumbling global economy even worse. But in the world of investing, there are those who are bucking the bearish market trends, not in the stock exchange, but in the art gallery. That's especially true in Asia, where the world's most famous auction houses have been racking up their biggest sell-offs. Susan Yu finds out why investors are shunning shares to pay record prices in the art scene.
Well, this was the first big auction that we've had in Asia. It was something that was clearly going to give us an indication of how buyers in Asia may or may not have been affected by the terrible events there, yes.
It's affected them because a lot of the people who have money to buy art had money tied up in the stock market, perhaps even in businesses that were lost on September 11th. So I think that probably it will take a little bit of time to recover.
Financial analysts agree. It'll be some time before investors gamble on the stock markets. Global economies are bracing for a recession and a protracted war on terrorism. Observers predict it will be another year before investors feel confident about the future and take a chance on the market again. All this, though, has been good news for one industry.
People will be putting their money into art, possibly as slightly as a hedge, as another place to put their money, and they can get some pleasure out of previous profits that they've already made on the rise of the old rise of the stock market.
Well, it's been a lot better bet than buying Asian stocks on the whole over the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, Japanese stock market's lower than it was 16 years ago, and most Asian markets are lower than they were 10 years ago. So it has been a better investment, but I think like financial assets, a lot depends on picking out the good stuff.
Initially, auction houses were unsure of buyer sentiment in the wake of the events of September 11th, but their worries proved unfounded in the region. Christie's and Sotheby's held their biggest auctions in Asia when the U.S.-led war against terrorism was launched. In Singapore, each auction house sold more than $3 million worth of art, a record take for the Lion City, while in Hong Kong, it was more than $30 million. Western collectors mostly stayed away, while Asian buyers were busy bidding.
What we saw this time, which was particularly interesting and very exciting for us, was a beginning of quite a large shift towards mainland China, where we saw a whole group of quite new collectors very confidently coming into our auctions.
Chinese artworks fetched record prices. Jiang Daichen's Melody of Flute on the River sold for over $650,000, twice its pre-sale estimate.
He developed all sorts of new and dramatic and exciting forms of the Chinese style of painting, in much the same way as Picasso was revolutionary in Western painting.
A mainland collector is now the proud owner of the scroll. This Qing Dynasty vase, meanwhile, went to a London collector for a whopping $1.6 million, a record price for a blue and white ceramic of that period. The piece was on the auction block a decade ago and was sold for a third of that amount.
We would tend to recommend that any form of investing in art would be looking at it as a medium or long-term investment. Turning things around too quickly, I think, is a mistake.
And that's how many Asian art collectors see their investments. Exhibits like these are common in Hong Kong, Beijing, and Shanghai. Chinese avant-garde artists like Beijing-based Bob Yan are regularly featured, reflecting how their works have received international recognition since the 1990s. Wang Guangyi is one of China's earliest contemporary artists. He says avant-garde pieces are becoming increasingly popular inside and outside of China.
Since 1990, our art has had a big impact, and it's related to what's been happening in China and its relationship with the West. China is less strict and more open.
There were several large shows which I think really surprised people. And that's why it caught attention, because foreign people don't really have any idea of what China was like, what life in China was like. They still have very much older ideas about a Cultural Revolution kind of China.
These days, many Westerners are paying more attention to Chinese art. They are starting to recognize it because most of them don't know much about China. I read in the newspapers how investors are putting their money into Chinese art. I think that's good news.
Gallery owners say most contemporary works by Asian artists have appreciated within the past decade. But buying art can be driven more by passion than profits. Sonia and Andrew Ballingal are avid collectors.
Well, I lived with Asian art when I was young. My family spent the best part of 200 years off and on in various parts of Asia, and so I grew up with Chinese and Southeast Asian and Japanese art.
Like an investor's portfolio, Ballingal's collection is diverse. It includes works by Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, and Chinese artists.
And if you bought the right companies in Asia over the last 10 or 15 years, you could have made yourself a lot of money, and I'm sure the same applies with art. I often say the stock market's like the art market. There's a tremendous faddishness about it. Things come in and out of vogue, things get massively hyped up and overpriced, and excellent things remain very cheap and neglected for long periods.
The financial analyst says he's in it for the long haul and has no plans on selling any part of his collection.
We saw it actually, bizarrely, in a revolving restaurant in Shanghai 2 years ago, and both my wife and I fell in love with it and said, yeah, we've got to have that, and we bought it and have absolutely no regrets.
Personally, a lot of the collectors that we have are very much personally and emotionally involved in the art, so we would tend to advise people to collect because they love the art and to collect what they love. That will give it a coherence that when they come to sell will assist in the saleability and the value, and therefore will improve the investment potential.